There are 5 game dev delusions that kill studios. I've seen them, and well-funded 100-plus person teams. If you lead a team or want to avoid losing touch with reality, this is for you. Right now, you might be trusting a high-powered team to solve every problem, believing in timelines that are built on vapor, and be solidly convinced everyone is going to love your game when it inevitably launches. If so, you're not alone. I've been brought in to help studios across continents, and I've watched great teams burn millions of dollars only to shut down because they left reality behind. Today, you get the 5 delusions that quietly wreck game teams and what you do instead to ship better games and grow as a leader. We'll cover play, planning, people, players, and purpose, and provide concrete actions you can use to ground your roadmap, align your team, and de-risk your game. There were well over 100 people once working on a well-funded game. Some were in North America, some were in Europe, some in Asia. Everyone was cranking out work. We'd been brought in to help leadership and get things back on track. Leaders were constantly planning and figuring out what the next 6 months looked like. Everyone talked about the high-quality people that they had on board the project and just the way that this game was going to work out. Our first question: where are you in development? What phase are you in for your game? The answer: well, we're about to enter production. Some teams are already there. Our second question: what's the game? The answer: actually a long silence, followed by some hemming and hawing about how there were still questions, it hadn't quite come together, but things were getting on track. The final answer was a vague genre description. We asked if we could play the game. More hemming and hawing, wasn't quite ready, that's not where we should be focusing. The conversations continued. We eventually told them they weren't in production at all. They were actually probably still in ideation, prototyping. And they had way too many people scattered across way too many locations for where the game was at. We tried to help where we could, but within 4 months, the whole project was shut down. This is not an isolated, rare story. I've seen this over and over. If you're listening to this and you think I'm talking about you because we worked together and this happened, I'm probably not. But how did we get here? Why do so many studios, whether big or small, end up leaving reality behind in their planning and start living in a delusion that will only end in pain? Let's dive into some common delusions game studios fall for and how to avoid them. We're going to hit 5 Ps today. The first of them is play. This is the first denial of reality. This is what happens sometimes when teams start chasing the first glimpse of fun they find in their game. So they've put something together, it's an early prototype, and they immediately are just like, this is great, look, it's fun, people say it's fun, our team's enjoying it, we brought in our friends and family, they say it's a good time, and suddenly we're off to the races, we're trying to scale the team, we think we've solved ideation, it's time to move into pre-production or even production. And this rush towards, I had a good time, we are now ready to make this game is one I see, I'd love to say only inexperienced teams, but I see this across the board. I see this idea of like, well, look, this is working. There's something here that's coming together. We've got one solid, good experience, and that means the game can be built. And by the way, there was a time where this is true. So if we go back to like the very, very, very early days of games, you had something like Pong. And it was a very simple game, and it was fun, and it was a single mechanic, and it worked. And you know what? We still talk about Pong today as one of the very early video games. Games aren't like this anymore. The space is much more full. Players are playing all kinds of different things. And so when you scale your team, because you've got it, you found that engaging thing, the fun or whatever it is, and you think you're ready for pre-pro or prod, you are seriously not. There's a lot more you have to do. You don't have anyone who understands why the game is fun usually at this point. You just have something and play tests are coming back and people are saying this is a good time. So what do you do instead? What do you do instead? How do you avoid this play fallacy, this denial of reality, thinking that we found fun and now we should chase it? Okay, look, it's okay to be excited when it starts feeling good. 1 or 2 fun pieces do not make a great game. Games are nested loops of experiences. Like no matter what game you look at, you can look at what's the smallest loop you have, what's the larger loop, what's the larger loop, what's the giant meta loop of why someone would come back to this game over and over and over. And not all games need to hit all of those loops. I might have an indie game that I want someone to play for a few hours and then put down, and I didn't charge very much for it and everybody wins. But a lot of games that you're trying to make, a lot of games, that, especially with large studios, really studios of any size, they're trying to create an experience they want people coming back to over and over and over again. And so just saying, I made something and it's kind of fun, or I made something and it seems to be enjoyable, playtesters like it, we like it, whatever it is, and that means we should go forward, that means we should proceed, is a huge mistake I see. So don't think of prototyping and ideation as a way to just find the first something that's engaging. Think about it as a way to teach your team what is and is not engaging around the whole area your game lives in. You want to develop genre expertise. And if you're going, well, this genre doesn't exist yet, whatever it is, whatever that space you're playing in, you want to develop expertise in there. Leif Johansson described this as you're building a lab when you're doing ideation and really some of pre-production as well. You're building a lab to develop expertise where people now understand how mechanics function, how far you can push them, where they go too far or too little. And that allows you to actually not just make one fun thing, but make sequences of fun things and combine them and put them together because you have an understanding of why players might be in this space and why they would continue to play it. You don't just have one little fun idea. So don't just have that little fun thing. You want tons of fun things, and you want teams that understand why they're fun, or at least have really good theories as to why. All right, so that's the first denial of reality that I see: play. Does this sound familiar? You're in a leadership role at a game studio. Everyone is busy working. No one has any time. But the actual game itself, isn't in a good spot. Maybe it's the tech. Maybe it's the lack of a validated prototype. Maybe it's that every person seems to have a different idea about what we're trying to build. But you've got a job. There are reports to send, meetings to schedule and facilitate, the occasional season of performance reviews to go through. And everyone is always so busy. When you step back, it makes you wonder if everyone is just going to keep slowly walking towards the abyss until the project or game fails. Is this what it means to be a leader in games? In tech? To endlessly repeat the same sequence of meetings without really moving the needle? To spend hours trying to get Jira tickets and dashboards where they should be? To pretend that everything is fine when you know deep down it really isn't. It doesn't have to be this way. You can make a difference. You can help your team and game succeed. But sometimes you need a bit of help to get there. I've started a game dev leadership accelerator. It aims to level up leaders who see opportunities to make a difference but don't know how to capitalize on them. We'll walk through what it means to lead well and give you tools to understand your organization's challenges and implement changes to overcome them. Game dev is hard. Knowing how to lead will give you an edge. It will still be hard, but you'll be ready to tackle it. If you're interested, let me know below. Hit the link. I hope to see you in the accelerator because I believe better leaders will help teams make better games, and I look forward to someday playing what you create. Second denial of reality, and the second P, planning. This is something, this is so endemic, and as a producer by trade, this one really gets to me. Trusting early estimates of how long work will take is something I see many studios, huge and small, indie, AAA, well-funded, not funded. Everybody falls into this trap. You brought a group of people together. It's actually sometimes worse when you have a more experienced team because everybody's even more likely to trust that the months and week estimates they gave of how long something's going to take is real. But you see it across the board. And the thing we need to recognize about game development overall, there is inherent uncertainty in the space of game development. We are not operating in a space like a factory where we know exactly what our output is, and as long as we go through all the steps, we'll get to that output. We are trying to create something that players will like. The players are changing. The games around us are changing. Our team is changing. We're learning and developing, and things are, we're discovering things all the time while we're doing this. And so when I see people lay out these detailed plans from the very beginning, sometimes when they haven't even scaled up, they make all these assumptions. They make all these assumptions about we're going to find the right staff at the right time to build our team out, that all the tools that we have are going to be easy to use and continue to be easy to use, that the outcomes we get the first time we try this, it's going to work and it's going to prove something, and all the features that we build, all the different systems in our game are going to fit together and click together nicely. Again, this failure to take seriously that so much of this is unknowns at the start. And so we fall into a fallacy. We believe this timeline, we put it all together, and it looks so complete. It might be in a Gantt chart, it might just be somewhere in an Excel doc, wherever it lives. There's this chart that shows we do this, and then our game is going to be great. And look, according to these timelines, that'll take 2 years. And how many times do you see major games with massively experienced teams doing multiple huge pivots of what the game is, and others that probably should have because they ended up shipping something that was bad, perhaps because they got stuck on their plan. So what do you do instead? Key thing here, recognize how much you don't know in game development. Really take it seriously. You don't know how players are going to react. You don't know how the features are going to fit together. You don't know what staff you're going to have and at what time and all these different things. None of that's going to go the way you want it. It's okay to have the plan. I'm not saying don't make the plan. I'm not even saying don't put a timeline around it. I am saying hold it with a massive grain of salt, hold it loosely, and let reality come in and show you where you need to go, show you where value lies. It's okay sometimes if you have to try 3 or 4 different ideas to get something to work right. But if you didn't have that built into your plan, it's going to cause you to panic if you thought you had to hold to the plan. So recognize how much you don't know, and as early as you can, start measuring how fast things are actually moving. This is one I see all the time. Everybody says like, well, early on, we're going way slower than we're going to be going later. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. Even though we get better with the tools, even though we start to collaborate better, a lot of times our games start becoming more complex over time. And that makes every little thing we do that much harder. And so you can have this, yes, we'll go a little bit faster because everybody gets familiar with the tools, but we'll get a little bit slower and these things can balance out. So be careful about that assumption and instead measure what's actually happening and attempt to use what you measure to predict the future. So basically compare, hey, it took us X amount of time to get these 3 things done. These 3 things seem like they're about the same size as those 3. Why do we think it's going to take half or a quarter of that time this time around? Again, lots of people falling into this trap. Well, it's just going to go faster because we're going to get better. You get better and it still might not go faster. So keep these things in mind. Okay. So first thing we talked about was play. Second thing we talked about was planning. Our third P, our third denial of reality is people. This is the idea that all you need to do is get the right people on the bus. If you ever heard that phrase, get the right people on the bus and that's going to be it. That's how you win. Hire great people, the key to success. I see people doing this all the time. This was huge a few years ago, especially in the startup space. VCs seem to really latch on to teams that had founders or people on the team that had highly pedigreed, had a ton of experience. They had very successful games shipped. You often see this as a focus heavily on seniors because seniors have done it a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that. They have done it a lot. They do have valuable experience. You know, I'm a senior. I'm not going to just say like seniors don't bring anything to the table, but they don't bring everything to the table. Another version of this that I've seen in multiple studios is whenever you hire people, you just assume that they are the best because, well, we hired him and we only hired the best, right? That was our game plan. We were going to hire the best people. And so even if you don't have the best people and everybody's obsessed with having the best people, you tell everybody you have the best people. You act as though you have the best people. And we're all obsessed with being the best people. How many studios have I seen do some sort of layoff where the last message is, we were the best devs in the world? Now, they might be. Some of them might be, but the reality is stop focusing so much on that and start focusing on something else. And you know what? Also to point out with this, it doesn't work. One of the things I've seen over and over, especially in the big, like AAA, the large publishers, large studios, I see them pull together these teams filled with only the best of everything. And they hope that that's just going to make everything work. And often, actually, the reverse happens. It's a very, very expensive team because all those people are very, very highly paid. And they can't seem to get along. They can't seem to collaborate. They can't seem to align on how they're going to proceed. And they're all just so convinced that we're the best ever and we're all amazing. We all know what we're doing, that an ego sort of takes over and causes lots of problems. The other thing to realize is that the reason someone was best was not just because of that person. I had a quote from W.E. Deming, a bad system beats a good person every time. I think that's very true. So you have to recognize that, yes, it's good to have good people, but also the context they're operating in and the systems matter at least as much as those people. If you have a system that doesn't allow people to thrive, it doesn't matter how great they are. You're going to crush them. You're going to ruin their output. We'd all love to believe that, like, even in a broken system, all the right people can bring something together. And, there's like that 1 in a million chance that something like that happens. But overall, you want to be focusing on your system. You want to be focusing on providing the right context. You want to be focusing on bringing the right people in who have the right skills. Whether they've shipped a gajillion things and been the best and, gotten awards or whatever else, you want to focus on people who are doing the right thing. So what do we do instead? I kind of just talked about it. Hire for values alignment first. Hire for people that are going to work in the way you want to work. Focus on people who can get behind the game you're building, and are going to be doing things like giving feedback and handling conflict and behaving culturally in ways that match what you want to see in the studio, that match the values of your studio. Also, don't just hire seniors. Yes, they have a ton of experience, and you certainly want some of them early on when you're just a few people. I get why that seems like a really good idea, and in many ways it is. They also have the most preconceived notions about how work gets done, and they cost a heck of a lot more. So it can actually be really valuable, even early on, to get some strong mids in there, people who are really, like, they're into it, they want to do the work, they're behind the game, they're culturally aligned, and they're going to learn and continue to develop in a way that matches the studio you're creating. even juniors fairly early on. I think a lot of people dismiss juniors. They don't want them early. They bring a different perspective. What a player is changing all the time. And frankly, junior devs in the games industry are often more connected to what a player wants today than a senior dev who might still have a lot of baggage from their past. Again, just, you don't have to pay them as much. They don't have as much experience. Yes, they might not move as fast in some ways. The seniors may be better in some ways, but they are going to be more moldable to the culture. They're going to be more adaptable to getting on board with the game. And so they're going to be in some ways easier to lead. And that's a real value. That's something that can help you. So, yeah. So first thing we talked about play. Second thing we talked about planning. Next, we talked about people. Okay, what's the fourth denial of reality? Our fourth P, layers. This one I see so much. Terrible audience modeling. Okay, so there's this thing called the TAM, SAM, SOM. I see this all the time in pitch decks. The TAM is the total addressable market. And someone will put on there, oh, there's like 3 billion gamers in the world or whatever. And then they'll say the serviceable addressable market, and they'll have like a smaller circle in that. And we'll say, well, it's 10 to 15% of this 3 billion. And then they'll have the serviceable attainable market, and that's the SOM. And then that'll be like some, and they'll just keep like shrinking down. And they'll be like, look at this. If we get 3% of the total people that we view in our serviceable addressable market, our game's going to make $200 million or something like that. And I understand there's data behind this. I'm not saying you shouldn't think about stuff like your TAM and SAM and SOM, but the majority of the time you have no idea. You're making a game that's unique. Your game needs to solve some unique player need. You don't know what that is right now. You have theories about it, but as you're going forward, having this TAM, SAM, SOM, people fall into this and they're like, wow, look at this. We're really set up to succeed. Because if we get, I think someone described it as like, if we get 1% of this $1 trillion market, oh my gosh, that's $10 billion. You're like, this stuff happens, and it lulls us all into a false sense of security. Another one that's very related to this, and sometimes it even falls into the TAM, SAM, SOM fallacy, is the genre or comp game comparison. So you look at the genre of the game that you're trying to create, and you say, well, how many people play this genre? Well, okay. And you do some similar math. You're like, well, I'll get 1% of that. Or you have competitor games that you think are going to be very similar to when you are, whether they're in the genre or not. And you're like, well, look at how many people play this and this and this and this. That's our audience, right? And again, it's not dumb to think about this. It's dumb to think that any of this is real. It's good as a modeling exercise. It's good because if you did this exercise and you said like, we ran our TAM, SAM, SOM, there's nobody. Okay, that's really good to know. I don't think anybody is doing that honestly enough. And that's why this is a denial of reality. We think about our players, we think about our audience through these horrible lenses. And a lot of times I'll even see this when people do genre, like combining two genres. They'll be like, I don't know, I'm combining match 3 with Sudoku or something like that, like match 3 with word game. That's one, I'm sure that's been done a million times, but I'm combining that. And they just go, oh, my total market is both of those combined. Right. And it's like, wait, no, maybe it's the Venn diagram in the middle. I'm like, okay, well, even that, it's like, you don't know exactly what that is. And this whole idea that I can compare to genres or other games and use that as some rubric to understand how many players I could expect to play this game, I don't think those follow through well. And there's this idea that just because you think something's good, that you think your game is going to be on par with all these other titles and it's going to solve the same need or solve it really better, which is what it has to do, everybody else will too. And they might, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to be playing your game because you need to think about this a little bit differently. So what do you do instead? This is pulling from the conversation I had with Ryan Scott. So first, you recognize that especially early on, you don't have a clue if you can peel any audience away from anything else. And you might have zero success doing that. So even if all of that work was done and you end up coming out with a decent game, no one might play it. And by the time you ship, the other thing that might happen takes years. Whole market might be different. So you did your analysis, and now we're several years later. I guarantee there was someone working on a real-time strategy game around 2009, 2010, when RTSs were still popular, but they were sort of decreasing in popularity. And then a bunch of things came out. A lot of tower defense games came out. A lot of MOBAs came out. And like mobile RTSs came out. All these things started coming out and started wrecking the RTS space. And so by the time you got your game out the door, it's like, oh my gosh, all of my data was wrong. That can also happen because we are in a fast shifting market. So you have to be aware of that. You aren't sure you can peel anybody away. And by the time you ship, the whole market might shift. So how do you get around this? Well, first thing, you need to figure out what player need you think you're solving that is currently unsolved for any player anywhere, regardless of what game they are attempting to play. What is the player need you are actually addressing that is unique? And I know people, I wish I could give like really concrete examples of this. Again, hit my episode. We'll put a link to the description for Ryan Scott. He talked about the difference between what Overwatch had and what Marvel Rivals did to peel players into it out of Overwatch. I think you could also look at like something Valorant to CSGO. What was going on there? And a lot of people misunderstand this and think, oh, there's some mechanic that's going on. It's not about the mechanic. It's not about oh, look, I differentiated in this particular way. It's solving a player need better. That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're looking for. So how do you know if you're doing that? Honestly, in many ways, you won't until you ship. But best way to get ahead of this, use early and frequent playtesting with as large a group as you can. That doesn't mean you have to go into early access, doesn't mean you have to go broad and public. You can keep these closed and small, but playtest with a lot of players, playtest with people that you think would be interested in your game, that you think do have a player need that is answered by your game and nothing else on the market or nothing else as well in the market. But again, even there, it really needs to be something you're solving some new problem for them. So that's step one. The second one is just acknowledge the uncertainty. And because if you do that, if you know you're going to be doing early, frequent playtesting with as many people as you can, you also recognize that you're going to be acknowledging the uncertainty. That means you need to take marketing and community seriously very early on. Do not wait till the end to figure out what it is that your game actually provides to a player. So yeah, we've talked about play. We've talked about planning. We've talked about people. We've talked about players. Okay, last one we're going to cover today, the fifth denial of reality. This one is so common. It's the purpose. We all know what the game is. We know what we're building. All of us do. No, you don't. I know you wish you did. Unless if you're all by yourself, and sometimes even then, you really don't know what it is you're building. No matter how good or experienced your design lead or design director, or creative director, or executive producer, whoever holds the vision is, the game won't come out as you expect. To add to this, the more you think you know how everything is going to work up front, the more frustrating reality is going to be for you. And the more likely you are to not spend the time learning you really need to, because you're going to think, oh, again, it's related to that planning thing. I just need to build all the systems that I know will click together just perfectly to build this thing. No, you don't. But because you think you do not prioritize the experimentation, understand that you're going to need to pivot, understand that you're going to need to try things multiple times. Remember uncertainty. It's everywhere in game dev. You need to embrace it. You need to look at that uncertainty and say, this means all my timelines are ridiculous. This means what I think the game is might be ridiculous. Embrace that and say, so how do I learn about this uncertainty? Acknowledging the uncertainty doesn't mean there's nothing you can do about it, but it does mean there is something you should do about it, and it is reduce it in the key ways that will allow you to develop a successful game. When you don't do this, I've seen so many situations. Devs all feel blocked because there's some vision holder or set of vision holders, and they're the arbiters of what the game should be, and everybody's constantly going to them and asking like, well, wait, what should this look like and how should this be? And so devs feel like they can't make progress. Leads then feel like a bottleneck. Those senior people, the vision holders, they feel like they're bottlenecks because they are, and everyone starts pointing fingers. Why aren't you getting more work done? Well, I don't know what to do. You need to tell me. Well, I've got so much I'm trying to do. Could you just try some stuff? And then you try some stuff, and the design director like kicks it back, is like, that's not in line with the vision. It's like, okay, well, what is the vision? And well, we already talked about this. We've talked about this last quarter. We talked about it when we started the company. Why don't we all know? Because alignment is really hard. Hey, leaders and game devs, if you love what we do here at Building Better Games, imagine what we could create with your support. By joining our Patreon, you help us bring deeper insights, develop better training, and host more expert discussions to level up your leadership and game development skills. Plus, as a patron, you're going to get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to episodes, and a chance to ask your burning questions directly to us. Join now and help us build better games together. Figuring out what your game vision is and then riding the waves as your studio understands the game, understands the team, understands the audience. It's very difficult. You're trying to do it all simultaneously. And so often we deprioritize that alignment, the shared understanding of where we're trying to go in the interest of trying to get more work done. You have to keep investing there. So anyway, jumping ahead, what do we do instead? First, If you are that creative director, that design director, the vision holder for the game, you need to be as clear as you can be, but also you need to focus on learning as fast as you can. Don't ever assume that great idea in your head for what the game should be will work out perfectly, or at all, really, but especially not like it's going to be just like this. Small learning loops regularly hit when it comes to games, tools, everything are going to pay dividends for your studio down the line, but you need to be open to that. Second thing in this one, recognize that you won't ever be perfectly aligned as a team, but you have to keep investing in the space of alignment. Otherwise, everyone's going to drift apart. Even if you spend a bunch of time early on getting everyone on the same page, as you hire more people and as work is done, people learn different lessons, they start taking the direction for the game to new places and different and divergent places. Everybody starts going their own way. It causes all sorts of issues. So I'm not saying you need to be in some giant alignment meeting once a week or every day or whatever, but it is creating an environment. Like, this is something very important for all the leaders. Create an environment where conversations about the why and the what that are happening with the game are going on all the time. Formal, informal, whatever it is. You want people in different disciplines, people in the same disciplines, to be comfortable going and talking to each other and realizing, like, wait a minute, we're disagreeing not about the specific piece of work, because that's what often, how often the misalignment manifests, where, well, wait a minute, I thought it should be this size. Oh no, I thought it was going to be this size. Okay, wait, stop. Why does this matter? Let's step that back. Okay, how does that fit into the game vision? And I know a lot of people will get frustrated by this because there's this constant laddering up to, like, every bit of work we should do should ladder into the high-level vision and our local, whatever is a milestone goal or phase goal, whatever it might be. We should constantly be laddering up to that and make sure that that's a smooth line all the way up. It's time-consuming. It's brain-intensive activity. There's a lot of slow thinking going on, but it's very important, and you have to be willing to spend that time, willing to spend those cycles. One thing I like to say about this is, you want to be doing less work that's the right work rather than a lot of work. And I think we get that backwards a lot of times early on or throughout game development. We focus on doing a lot of work rather than trying to spend the time to figure out what's the right work. And we hope that just will overwhelm with quantity. Well, the reality is, in a lot of the modern market, you need quality more than you need quantity. And sometimes you need both, but you have to have quality. So you want to be bubbling up those disagreements. Okay, so we've talked about the 5 Ps, these disconnects from reality that occur in game studios. Again, I've seen this in R&D teams at large companies. I've seen this on indies. I've seen this in startups, well-funded startups. This runs across the board, or runs across the experience, runs across platforms. Be careful of falling into traps around play, planning, people, players, and the purpose. These disconnects from reality will cause you to fail. Closing thoughts here. The thing that happens when we disconnect from reality most of the time, we latch on to a belief that we want to be true. And because we're latched onto it, we fail to observe and absorb what is actually true. We fail to stay grounded in reality. How do you avoid this overall? You have to remain humble and curious, and especially for those leaders out there, leaders in game dev, you have to remain humble and curious. It's when our ideas get away from us that we end up living in these delusions. We lock on to the plan or idea of who the audience will be, or that, oh, we found the fun, or all these different things. We lock into them. And then we start sharing those delusions as leaders with other people. We have to remain humble instead. We have to remain curious instead. Stay grounded. If you can't stay grounded, make sure someone else on the team is there to keep you and the team overall grounded, and pay attention to that person. You want the optimistic skeptic on your team, even very early on. If everybody's just unbelievable optimists about how it's all going to work out, I guarantee you're going to end up in fantasy. And, the survivor bias around the studios that came out of, like, we were all in fantasy and somehow it worked out, and we're all like, that's what you're supposed to do. No, you should have people on your team that are helping ground you. If you can't be one of them, have other people around you that are. Recognize too, and this is just a reality, game dev is always going to be high risk. Many more games fail at all sizes than succeed. So don't make it worse by leaving reality behind. If you stay grounded, you increase your odds of being one of the successful games. All right, to wrap up, quote from Carl Sagan: "It is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring." With that, wrap this episode. Thanks for listening.